want you to just close your eyes for a second. Well, assuming you're not driving, of course.
Right, yeah. Keep your eyes on the road if you're driving.
Exactly. But if you can, I want you to imagine that you were traveling with like an ancient caravan across this endless starlit desert.
Oh, wow. Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah. So the campfire has, finally died down to just embers. You're wrapped tightly in your cloak. And the the crushing isolation of the dunes really sets in.
It's just you in the dark.
Right. And looking out into that pitch black, you suddenly realize just how completely, terrifyingly vulnerable you are. So welcome to a deep dive into the shadows of Arab mythology.
Because that specific environment, the open desert at night, is basically the ultimate crucible for human vulnerability.
Yeah, it really is.
When you strip away, city walls and communal noise and artificial light, your mind kind of abhors that sensory vacuum.
It has to fill the dark with something.
Exactly. It has to populate the darkness with something. And today we're looking at a stack of sources that do exactly that.
We really are. We've got some amazing stuff today. We're working with this incredibly detailed visual bestiary of Arab mythological creatures, an infographic that maps out specific desert horrors, and this is the really wild part, a comprehensive text exploring one incredibly obscure nocturnal predator.
And our mission for this deep dive isn't just to tell scary campfire stories, right?
Right. No, we're going way deeper than that.
We want to decode these legends. We're looking beyond the surface level of just monsters to really understand what these myths reveal about human psychology.
And the brutal mechanics of desert survival.
Yes, and our totally hardwired fear of the unknown, because these narratives, they actually functioned as ancient frameworks.
Like coping mechanisms.
Exactly. Frameworks for processing these inexplicable tragedies that early communities just couldn't otherwise understand.
So, looking at the visual bestiary provided in our sources, the sheer volume of these entities is just staggering. I mean, you look at this landscape, and it is heavily populated with hazards.
It's a crowded desert out there.
It really is. You've got the ghoul, which I think a lot of people know.
Right, the classic graveyard-dwelling flesh eater.
Yeah. But then the text introduces the Ifrit, which are these massive, towering spirits forged from smokeless fire.
Usually representing chaotic rebellion, yeah.
And then there's the Jinn, which are described as shape-shifting dwellers of the deep desert. They're deeply tied to the environment itself.
Almost like elemental forces.
Exactly. And then, this is where it gets genuinely surreal. We see entities with the bodies of men and the heads of dogs.
The dog heads, yeah.
And a creature called the Silua. And the sources depict the Silua as this feral, almost aquatic desert hybrid demon.
Oh, right. The one that uses pure cunning to lure travelers away from their groups.
Yes. But what's fascinating is that the folklore doesn't just, invent these monsters randomly.
Oh, it categorizes them. It assigns very specific entities to specific types of human suffering.
They essentially map out this natural geography of psychological and physical threats.
And the sources highlight a few specific threats that map perfectly onto that geography. Take the Caravan, for example.
Oh man, the Caravan.
It's a perfect example of a purely psychological threat. The lore states that absolutely everyone is born with their own personal Caravan.
Wait, everyone?
Everyone. It's an entity that acts almost like a dark shadow.
Just whispering sins into your ear.
Right, encouraging moral failings and acting as the direct architect of your nightmares.
So, in a society operating long before modern clinical psychology, way before we had vocabulary for the subconscious or cognitive dissonance.
Or intrusive thoughts, yeah.
Exactly. Before all that, the Caravan served this crucial sociological function.
Because if a person experienced a dark urge or a terrifying violent dream,
that wasn't necessarily viewed as a terminal flaw in their own soul.
Right. It was the influence of an external entity.
Which is brilliant, honestly. A culture can manage guilt and enforce social cohesion so much more effectively when the darkest parts of the human mind are externalized.
It provides a framework for redemption. You aren't inherently evil, You just have to resist the Caravan.
It's such a smart way to handle it. But, okay, then the sources shift to the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
You're talking about the Gadar.
The Gadar. This is not some subtle internal voice you wrestle with in your conscience.
No, the Gadar is an overt, completely devastating physical threat.
The source text describes it as an ugly, malicious Jinn taking the form of this hulking, oversized human.
And it preys on isolated travelers.
And its method of torture is I mean, it's incredibly specific and awful.
Yeah, it is brutal.
It attacks and bites the reproductive organs of its victims.
Right.
And then it just abandons them in the middle of a waterless expanse to die.
Which is horrifying. But the Gadar represents the absolute apex of physical destruction in a tribal environment.
Because it doesn't merely kill the individual.
Exactly. It actively strips them of their lineage and their future.
Right. And in ancient societies, your bloodline and your tribe, that's your only legacy.
It's your only safety net. Erasing that is the ultimate act of violence.
Leaving the victim to the slow, agonizing death of the elements. It serves as this brutal, unforgettable warning to the rest of the community.
A warning about the consequences of separating from the group.
Okay, let's unpack this. This mythology is basically functioning as an ancient, supernatural survival guide.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Right. Because if the Quran explains the internal, invisible struggle of the human mind.
And the Gadar explains the overt, loud, brutal violence of a physical attack.
That leaves a massive blind spot. I want to explore what happens when the threat doesn't fit either of those categories.
The gray area.
Yeah. What happens when the danger is completely silent, entirely invisible, and you simply fade away without a struggle?
Well, that void in the survival guide is filled by the centerpiece of our deep dive today.
The big one.
A creature that perfectly bridges the gap between the visceral physical world and the unseen terrors of the night.
The Balis.
The Balis.
Or the text says it's sometimes pronounced the Balis, depending on the regional dialect.
Right. And it's an incredibly rare creature in the folklore. It's this terrifying amalgamation of traits.
It operates somewhat like a ghoul.
But it possesses the environmental ties of a desert djinn.
And it relies on the parasitic nature of a vampire.
Exactly. All uniquely adapted to prey on travelers while they are completely unconscious.
Which is so creepy. And the physical descriptions we have from the text are highly inconsistent.
Which really speaks to how this myth operated in oral traditions, you know.
Yeah, the game of telephone over centuries. It's described as having a skeletal, skinny body, often covered in mottled spots.
With glowing eyes.
Yes, glowing eyes. But the face is where the descriptions totally fracture. It's somewhere between a human, a wildcat, and a hyena.
And it moves with this bizarre, unnatural hunch.
It does. And the variations in the folklore only add to the disorientation. Like, some regional accounts claim it has upside-down feet.
Oh, right. So any tracks it leaves in the sand appear to be walking in the opposite direction.
Which makes it utterly impossible to track or hunt.
That is so clever and terrifying.
Other accounts mention a long reptilian tail, and almost all of them agree its skin possesses the distinct freezing temperature of a corpse.
That visual inconsistency is a hallmark of an apex myth.
Oh, how so?
Well, if no one actually survives a clear encounter with the creature, or if the human mind just fragments under the stress of seeing it, the descriptions will naturally warp over generations.
That makes total sense. But the physical description is secondary to its methodology.
Oh, the modus operandi is...
Yeah. It's incredibly methodical. It doesn't rely on brute force like the Gadar.
No, it's a silent thief.
It waits until well after midnight when the temperature plummets and the campfire is totally dead.
Right.
It creeps up to a sleeping traveler, locates their exposed feet, and uses a long, specialized tongue and extremely fine fangs to lick the soles of the feet.
Or any small pre-existing wounds.
Yeah. And it extracts the blood so slowly and carefully that the victim bleeds to death without their nervous system ever triggering a wake-up response.
It's a method of extraction engineered to bypass every single human defense mechanism.
Okay, wait. I need to challenge a premise we established earlier.
Okay, lay it on me.
You mentioned that these myths functioned as coping mechanisms, right? A way for ancient people to make sense of the world and find some comfort by naming their fears.
Oh, yeah.
But inventing a creature that silently drains your blood through the bottom of your feet while you are entirely helpless, that does not sound comforting in the slightest.
It sounds like a nightmare.
It sounds like a recipe for absolute insomnia. How does creating a highly specific, foot-licking nocturnal predator help anyone sleep at night?
Well, the comfort provided by these myths isn't about physical safety.
Okay.
It's about psychological legibility.
Psychological legibility.
Yeah. The human brain is essentially a pattern recognition machine. It violently rejects the concept of random, senseless tragedy.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right? If a traveler dies silently in their sleep, attributing that death to a chaotic, uncaring universe is an existential terror that can paralyze a community.
You can't fight a chaotic universe.
Exactly. But by inventing the Balis, you introduce causality.
The monster has a name.
It has a specific method, It operates under certain rules.
Hmm.
A universe with a monster in it is terrifying, sure.
But a universe where nature randomly turns your lights off for no reason is unbearable.
Precisely. Causality, even if malicious, is just easier for the human mind to process.
Wow. And the lore also addresses the mechanical problem of the victim waking up, which is fascinating.
But the paralyzing aura.
Yes, the texts suggest the Balis possesses a paralyzing aura. If a traveler happens to stir and opens their eyes to see the Balis, they are instantly paralyzed.
Frozen with fear.
They experience this crushing physical weight that locks their muscles and completely prevents them from crying out for help.
Essentially trapping their conscious mind inside a frozen body while they are drained.
Which is just awful to think about.
It is. But that specific detail perfectly mirrors the physiological phenomenon of sleep paralysis.
Oh, where the brain awakens but the body's sleep atonia remains active.
Right, the natural paralysis that keeps us from acting out our dreams. The mythology literally weaponizes the biological vulnerability of sleep.
Because when we sleep, our core temperature drops significantly and our heart rate slows.
So the Belize is the cultural manifestation of that literal slipping away into the void.
So the researchers who compiled these sources dug into the etymology of the word Balis.
Yeah, that part was super interesting.
They noted that there isn't a confirmed definitive root in classical Arabic. However, they strongly link it to the word iblis.
Iblis, which generally translates to a profound state of sadness or despair.
Or the condition of being cursed.
It essentially denotes a broken spirit. Some scholars suggest it might just be an ancient, highly localized term for a malicious creature.
But the connection to despair is critical, I think.
Absolutely. It implies that the Balis doesn't just extract physical vitality. It is the literal embodiment of a hopeless, cursed end.
It is the manifestation of the despair one feels when stranded in an endless wasteland.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, to truly understand the origin of this despair, the sources emphasize looking at the environmental reality of the time.
Right. We are talking about ancient caravan routes stretching across hundreds of miles of unforgiving terrain.
The trade networks required people to sleep out in the open desert, near abandoned wells or ancient crumbling ruins.
And the physical toll of that environment cannot be overstated. I mean, a traveler was constantly exposed to highly venomous nocturnal insects.
Scorpions, vipers, predatory animals.
Furthermore, the desert environment features sheer temperature extremes. You have blistering, dehydrating heat during the day,
Followed by freezing, hypothermic conditions at night.
So the sources include this classic tale of a lost caravan that perfectly illustrates how this environment birthed the legend.
Oh, I love this story.
It's so atmospheric. A caravan makes camp for the night in the deep desert. Everyone goes to sleep. When the sun rises, the camp wakes up, but one man does not.
He's just gone.
They find him entirely dead. His skin is drawn and deathly pale. But the crucial detail is the complete absence of violent wounds.
There is no sign of a struggle.
No crushed bones, no wild animal tracks tearing through the camp.
So the fellow travelers investigate the body, and eventually they examine his feet.
And what do they find?
They discover faint, strange lick marks and realize the body is severely depleted of blood.
Which leads the sheikh of the caravan to assess the scene and declare the Belize passed by them.
And that declaration basically acts as a prehistoric forensic conclusion.
Because a lone traveler is found dead. It could have been exposure, right? A sudden drop in core temperature leading to hyperthermia.
Or it could have been an undetected bite from a highly venomous snake.
Or an underlying illness that finally caused the heart to give out.
But because there was no bloody struggle to explain the sudden absence of life, the human mind demanded an explanation that fit the silent nature of the death.
Every aspect of the Belize is meticulously designed to represent a specific human fear tied to that exact scenario.
Let's break that down. The night represents the ultimate unknown.
A complete removal of the primary human sense of sight.
And the loss of blood isn't merely about gore.
No, it is the universal symbol for the gradual, unstoppable draining of one's life force and vitality.
The desert itself is the physical embodiment of ultimate isolation.
And sleep represents complete and utter physical vulnerability. You are forced by biology to surrender your consciousness in order to survive the journey.
But by doing so, you invite the void.
Wow. And our sources actually take this a step further by introducing this fascinating cultural comparison.
East versus west.
Yes. The text draws a direct line between the Arab Belize and the classic Western European vampire.
Specifically, the aristocratic archetypes like Dracula.
Exactly. And putting these two entities side by side reveals how intensely local our universal fears become when they're filtered through our specific environments.
The habitats of these creatures reveal a stark contrast in cultural anxieties.
Think about the classic Western vampire. It is intrinsically tied to human settlement.
They inhabit European villages, they sleep in local graveyards, or they reside in ancestral castles looming directly over a populated town.
They are adjacent to or embedded entirely within society.
Whereas the Belize exists on the extreme periphery.
It haunts desolate ruins, empty caravan routes, and abandoned wells far removed from human civilization.
And the prey they select is equally telling.
Oh, totally. The Western vampire infiltrates bedrooms in cities and towns. It preys on people firmly situated within the safety of their communities.
But the Baileys strictly targets isolated travelers.
Individuals who have intentionally or accidentally stepped outside the protective boundary of the tribe or the city.
And the actual nature of the beast diverges significantly as well.
Right. The European vampire is traditionally a cursed human.
They are aristocratic, often highly conversational.
Seductive, even.
Right. And fundamentally, they're a corrupted, twisted version of a person. They manipulate social rules.
But the Belize is entirely feral.
Yes. It is a wild Jinn, a desert anomaly that behaves much more like a cunning, starving animal than a fallen nobleman.
And the attack method completely cements the difference.
The neck versus the feet.
Exactly. The Western vampire is famous for the neck bite. It's an intimate, dominating, and highly social interaction.
It usually involves physically overpowering or psychologically seducing the victim while literally looking them in the eye.
But the Belize attacks the feet. It targets the furthest possible point from your consciousness.
It is a degrading, sneaky extraction that requires absolutely zero social interaction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The aristocratic Western vampire often represents a perversion of the social hierarchy.
The fear of the nobleman literally bleeding the local peasantry dry.
Or the fear of a contagious disease like plague or consumption, spreading through a dense community from an insider.
The monster looks like you, it lives near you, and it corrupts your neighbors.
The Balis, conversely, represents the absolute absence of society.
It's the fear of the wilderness encroaching on the human sphere.
Because the Arab historical reality at the time meant the primary daily existential threat wasn't necessarily your neighbor or some corrupt lord.
It was the unforgiving, isolated landscape.
The ultimate danger was getting separated from your caravan and being consumed by a wilderness that is entirely indifferent to your existence.
The Belize is feral because the desert is feral.
The environment completely dictates the architecture of the monster.
The psychological need to explain sudden death is universal, but the shape that explanation takes is built entirely from the materials available in the immediate world.
So pulling all of these threads together from our sources today, the ultimate takeaway is pretty profound.
It really is. The Belize isn't a biological organism that scientists are going to somehow discover in the sands.
But dismissing it as fake misses the point entirely.
Completely. It is the very real cultural embodiment of the primal terror of losing your life silently while you are completely stripped of your agency.
These ancient travelers were not simply entertaining themselves with ghost stories around a dying fire.
They were engaging in a vital psychological exercise.
They were actively putting a face to the abstract feeling of absolute vulnerability.
Because they needed to give a definitive shape to the shadows lurking just outside the reach of the firelight.
Naming a fear is the prerequisite to surviving it.
Absolutely.
So we've decoded a myth born from the raw terror of sleeping entirely unprotected under the open sky in an endless, hostile wasteland.
And while our environment has changed, our biology hasn't.
Right. Today, you and I sleep in heavily insulated, climate-controlled environments. We lock solid doors, we rely on digital security systems, and we have streetlights illuminating the darkness outside our windows.
Yet that deep physiological fear of being vulnerable in our sleep,
Resistance to slipping into unconsciousness.
it remains deeply hardwired into our ancient brains.
The desert trade routes may be gone, but the darkness remains exactly the same. So the next time you turn out the lights and you hear strange sound in the walls, or the house subtly settles in the cold, what modern anxieties do you let into your mind to explain it? The fire has died down. The isolation has set in. What shape do your shadows take?